To support the strengthening and upgrading, the outcome document also calls for the increased budget and the UN regular budget from voluntary contributions. Now, the next step for implementing the IFSD outcome, particularly from the Asia and Pacific as well as the UNEP point of view, I have a bit of a time constraint, so I shall just focus on the UNEP's role in the Asian Pacific. First of all, to reiterate that UNEP stands ready to assist the regional, sub-regional organizations and the government in the region, to partner with sister agencies in the UN system and engage civil society major groups as stakeholders. As I mentioned, those are the pointers coming out, the directives coming out from the outcome document. And more specifically, UNEP will support or work with SCAP and other UN agencies and intended to align our engagement mechanism or delivery model with what we call delivering as one model, which is being promoted by the Secretary General to have a coherent and comprehensive engagement of the United Nations as a group, as a team, rather than one agency coming in isolation from another. Also, UNEP will support the member states in the region through science and policy interface, which is, again, very crystal clear in the outcome document to strengthen the science and policy interface, as well as strengthening the rule of law for sustainable development, implementation of MES, capacity building, and exchange of information, best practices, and lessons learned. We'll also, as I mentioned, actively engage the regional and sub-regional networks of local stakeholders. The discussion of the sustainable development is going to be very, very important, as I mentioned, and through the green economy policies and tools, which we have helped in the region, for example, Indonesia, Philippines, Mongolia, Cambodia, Vietnam, those are the countries that really are moving forward with the new concept and paradigm shift. I think we plan to use those best practices in deciding on or in contributing towards the discussion in the future on SDG, as well as the future of the transformation of the green economy. Sustainable consumption in several countries, the work that we do also will be fed into green jobs and environmental discussion together with ILO. So those are some elements that UNEP is in general term, and we can discuss a little bit more in detail later when we have a question and answer session. I think that's that. I think I will stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nishimoto, for your initial presentation. In particular, you touched on the implication for the Asia and the Pacific in the context of the international framework. Thank you very much, Ms. Nishimoto. Now, let me invite the next speaker, who is Simon Olsen of IJS, who is fully engaged in this project. Simon, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Is this on? Thank you very much. I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, we don't have much time, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what the decisions in Rio may mean on the national level for implementation. Thank you. And also, so I'm going to look at particularly national sustainable development strategies as they were experimented with over the last 10 or so years to see which things have worked and which things have not worked. This is a research in progress, so that there's no final conclusion on it. This is the outline. I'm going to jump over that. Basically, yeah, so which governance mechanisms need to be brought into place to help Rio+20 outcomes being implemented at national level? Now, the NSDS, or National Sustainable Development Strategies, were originally a request as outcome 20 years ago in Rio in '92. And you can find them reflected in Chapter 8 of Agenda 21. Again, 10 years later at WSSD in Johannesburg, the commitment to them by countries was reaffirmed, calling for the establishment of strategies and processes to oversee the implementation of sustainable development at all levels. Actually, when we jump to the present, currently we have about 106 countries at the global level that have some level of implementation of sustainable development strategies. But the question is, how successful have they actually been? Are they currently working, or have they been one-time reports that afterwards have been put on a shelf and never to be revisited? Or have they been adopted by governments? And if not, why? These are some of the questions we are going to ponder about over this presentation. Now, national sustainable development strategies should provide a long-term intergenerational vision. They should build upon existing policies, strategies, and plans, and provide achievable objectives. As we have heard many times today in previous sessions, they aim to integrate the 3 dimensions of development and should be based around sound analysis and assessments, scientific assessments informing the policy making. The way to make these sustainable development strategies often involve so-called national councils for sustainable development that are multi-stakeholder groups or multi-stakeholder working councils that have many names depending on which country we are in. They should link into the national budgetary process, providing clear schedules of implementation. They should build trustful partnerships with other stakeholders from civil society and business, and enhance capacity, and also link national with subnational levels by decentralizing planning and implementation. Now, there's too much writing, so I'm going to just focus on a few of the highlighted, of the bolded bullet points here. So, for example, leadership seems to be a very, in the literature we've read, leadership seems to be a very central aspect, deciding on the uptake or the success of such a strategy. So one way to do it ideally would be to place the main focal points of the strategies directly under the Prime Minister, under the President, or also embed them into the country's constitution to ensure that after one legislative period, 4 or 5 years has passed by, the relevance of this strategy remains. However, in reality, it shows that often these strategies have lacked this high-level support. They have often been embedded at lower levels of government, of management. The main proponents of those strategies thus have often been just ministries of environment. For example, the so-called administrators of SD in Europe, for example, have experienced a lack of commitment and leadership, and so the strategies kind of remained at the fringes of political decision-making. They weren't really taken into account. So what we can say is, if they are not successfully involving political actors, such as cabinet ministers, parliaments, or other high-level figures and processes, they may not sufficiently link in with what is happening in terms of decision-making at national level. So the recommendation here would be the highest level political buy-in should be achieved and institutionalized for long-term goal setting. Another point is that a national sustainable development strategy often has quite a long-term view. It can have several decades. So it cannot just stand there on its own. It should align itself with other development strategies and plans of a country.